So let's have a talk about opacity and brushes. When we use a brush, on the top here we have opacity, we have this little guy here, this little button here, which is opacity on pressure, and then we have the flow. Okay, so these three things are the main, like say, settings we want to know about and we want to use. Now, opacity, the first one, well, this is pretty simple, okay? Something which is 100% opaque means that will cover completely what's behind it, okay? So let me go with hardness 100. Let me go with a little bit less size. And as you can see, this black paint, you see, I pick black in the foreground color, completely cover what's behind. If we go 50%, that will cover what's behind it just by 50% of the total result. And as you can see, the result here is darker just because we have a darker background. Okay, and so it basically adds 50% of this color, which is black at the moment, on top of the result. And I mean, remember that this is not, I mean, that easy to understand. But for example, if you add 50% of black to white, then you will get 50% gray. But if you add 50% of black to medium gray, then you don't get black. Okay, you get like 75% gray, which is this dark gray here. So anyway, opacity it's here, and there's something you need to know about opacity, which means that if you make like a line, if you paint a line, and without releasing the mouse or without releasing the pen, okay, so I'm keeping I'm doing the same stroke, and I go over the same area, as you can see here. This result is kind of weird if you think about like how stuff works in the world, in life. If you have a pen and you keep going on painting on one area, that area normally becomes darker, but is not the case. Okay, with opacity you basically set up the final amount of visibility of a single stroke. Okay, but that said, so if you do some painting and then you stop painting, so you go up with the pen, you release the mouse button, and then you paint again, you see, then it's another story. You will add opacity over opacity over opacity. So the first time, I don't know, 50% gray, the second time you have 75% gray, and so on and so on, until you get something really close to black. Okay, anyway, this is one way of working. And normally what I do is, most of the time I go really low with opacity if I want to do something like a nice gradient. And then if you go down with the hardness, and then you can start painting, you see, and you keep painting, you get to something black very soon, and you get this kind of gradient, even if this is not actually the best way to deal with gradients. And you can tell, because if you zoom in, you can see a lot of, you see lines. That's not great, I would say, because if you then work with, I don't know, curves or any type of adjustment, you may see those lines even more. Okay, and so what to do? Well, you need to work with the flow. Okay, so instead of working with the opacity, you work with the flow. Now, the flow is different than opacity, because opacity is the, let's say, final amount of visibility of a stroke. Okay, meanwhile, flow is like the amount of color that get out from the the brush. Or let's say, imagine if you have a spray paint can, okay, the one that you use to mix like graffitis, right? If you press a little bit, you get like a little bit of paint on the wall. But if you press more and if you keep pressing, you get more and more paint over the wall. And if you exaggerate, there's so many paint, and then it started like dripping down. So anyway, the flow is what you want to use if you want to simulate that effect. So if you keep like flow pretty high, there's a chance that you don't see any kind of a difference. And so the only way to get like a very strong result is to go very low with the flow. And as you can see, now you can tell that, see, there is a difference. So I'm pressing a little bit here, and then I start pressing more, and flow works, I mean, in the same stroke. So I'm not releasing the pen. So I'm keep pressing, you see, and it becomes darker and darker and darker. And is something that works on the amount of pressure, sure, and the amount of time also that you keep painting on the same area, on the same zone. So keep in mind that let's say flow works better than opacity, but at the same time, I can tell that is kind of way more difficult to manage, since depends on how much time you spend painting, and how many times you go over and over on the same spot. And you can tell, because now if I go a little bit here, I go like this, you see, if I pass on the same spot more than once, you see color basically adds some up, and you get a darker result in this case because I'm using a black color. So but anyway, this is a way more interesting, way more, I would say, natural and realistic in terms of amount of color you have on the canvas. Said that, you can try wherever you want, you can try whatever like combinations you want, but that if you paint with like, I don't know, 50% opacity, then you will never get, more than 50% gray. Now, said so, if you anyway want to play with the pressure, you can turn on this button here. And that means that even if you have opacity 100, okay, if you press less, you will get less opacity, okay? That's nothing, has nothing to do with the flow, okay? This is about opacity. And so you can have opacity, flow 100, and you keep, you see it kind of get the same result, but is way more, strong, is way more visible, and sometimes is not what you want. For example, the first thing we are going to do while painting will be to just draw some shapes, just draw some shapes and fill them with a flat color. So, for example, in that case, opacity on pressure is not a good starting point, because you want to have a flat color. You don't want to go over and over again on the same area to paint it. I just want to make it like once, and that's it. Keep in mind one thing: even if this is off, that doesn't mean that you don't have any opacity control on the brush. So what you need to do is, and this is kind of mandatory, this is really something you need to check. You need to go in the brush settings and see if you have transfer. See, transfer on means that, you see, something happens anyway here. Okay, you see at the end of the stroke here, there's some kind of difference in the opacity, and that's because this will basically turn on the option that something is happening with the opacity. And so you can have, for example, an opacity jitter, which is basically a randomization of the opacity for each stroke you have. You see, this is not really cool. I mean, not now, I would say. And opacity on pressure is basically turning on this control here. You see, this is pen pressure. This is exactly what you want. Okay, and you see is working even if this is not turned it on. So this is a little bit confusing sometimes, but this option here does exactly this. You put pen pressure on control, and as you can see is the same result. If I turn this off and still have this on, I mean, it's the same thing. Okay, this is, I mean, not turned off by automatically. That's why sometimes you turn this off and you still have the same result. Okay, because you need to go here and turn this off completely, and then you see that's off for real. And if you don't really want any transfer option, which means that you don't want to deal with opacity at all, you turn this off, and then you are sure that the entire stroke is like, I don't know, 100% black in this case. Okay. Said so. I mean, if you want to, do a really nice, soft, I would say, gradient, the idea could be to turn on opacity on pressure and then go really low with the flow. Okay, maybe we can go to 0 with the hardness, and then we can start painting. And I mean, if this is too strong, I mean, even if like flow at like 1%, you see that you don't have too much control, then go down with the opacity. And then you will see that it is gonna take a lot to make something really dark. Maybe I exaggerated, maybe like 10 is too much, but in this way you can have a really, I mean, you can build up your gradients with more strokes. I'm gonna keep painting and releasing the mouse, releasing the pen, wherever. And so this is the way to build up the gradients with, I mean, on a longer time, on you will spend more time, but you will have more control, and you will be you will get a better result at the end. That's it. And I mean, it's always like this. It's on one side you have time and control, on the other side you have the quality of what you're doing. And if you feel like that you have like too much lines, you can always like run a blur at the end, or maybe you can go up a little bit with the flow, so you have more colors, more colored flowing outside the brush every time you paint, and that will help. Okay, that's it. If you still have too many lines, remember that a single line, a single paint line is made of different strokes. See, so my advice is to go down with the spacing, like to 1%, and that will basically improve the quality, but at the same time it will add a little bit of lag to the final, to Photoshop, I would say. Another thing that helps a lot is to do the whole thing with just like one single paint. So if you press more, you get more visibility, but then you need to keep opacity to 100%, and it's not that easy. I mean, my advice is to try to keep your end really soft on the tablet, and I mean, you need practice. You see, even sometimes I do some mistakes. So don't worry about it. Try to find the values you feel like that works for you. And trust me, now I'm painting on a white canvas. So each problem here is way more visible than it should be. It's going to be, it's going to look better when you do this on final image, or I don't know, maybe you want to paint some light, maybe you want to paint some screen, glow or fog or something like that. It's not going to be that visible. Okay. So next exercise is about size on pressure.